Fantastic. Okay, so today we're going to be continuing our talk about obviously mindset, what it is. Definitely making sure that we fully understand mindset in its scope. So today we're actually going to be talking about negative thoughts. They're also called thought distortions. How negative thoughts affect you, how it affects your mindset, how that negative mindset affects your performance, and just your overall state of being. So I'll actually go ahead and hand it right off to Krista. She can go ahead and get us started. And then I'll just kind of touch in wherever need be. But Krista, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, so we're going to start off talking about how our negative attitudes, how our feelings, how those affect us. Really, they affect our whole body, the way our body works. It's not just in the way we think, the way we do things. It affects us just as human beings and the way our organs function, the way our heart, all of that, our overall health. So negative attitudes and feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, they create chronic stress that upsets the body's hormone imbalances. You get hormone imbalance. It depletes your brain chemicals that are required for happiness. It also damages your immune system. If you notice, a lot of times when you're stressed or when you have stressors in your life, most often that's when you get sick. Just like with all of the things going on in wintertime, why do you think flu viruses, why do you think colds often hit us in the winter? It's not just weather changes, it's also how the winter weather affects our body and our mind. We have winter blues. We almost go into states of depression, and that also causes our immune system to be low. Therefore, we get sick. Chronic stress can actually decrease our lifespan. Science has actually, this was something I didn't know, but reading into this, science has identified that stress shortens our telomeres. Those are the end caps of our chromosomes and our DNA strands. So this causes our cells to age more quickly. I've obviously heard all my life that stress can kill you. And this right there just proves it. It shortens your DNA strands, so that makes your cells age much more quickly. And when your cells are aging quickly, you're going to die quicker. It causes hypertension, obviously blood pressure problems when we're stressed, cardiovascular disease, all that stress and the hypertension on our heart failure, heart disease, especially at early ages. I know for me, I have really high cholesterol. Most commonly, it's not just the foods I eat, it's also the stresses I put on myself. Digestive disorders. I don't know how about any of you, but for me, whenever I'm in a stressful situation or I have a lot of stressors, my gut hates me. I get upset stomach, I feel bloated and just gross all the time. It also makes us more prone to infection. Just like I was saying earlier, sicknesses are a lot more common when you're stressed. Do you want to touch on anything before I keep going?
No, I was going to say those are what we it's like in the clinical world, one of the things that we always did when we were doing our intakes with patients was we would ask them about, a lot of their physical health, and we would often correlate a lot of their physical health with the severity of their psychological health. And these are called somatic symptoms. There's a really great book, if you ever want to read it. It's called Zebras Don't Have Ulcers. Why zebras don't get ulcers. And it's just talking about because they live this like peaceful, oblivious life. They're not stressed. They don't fret about things. They don't worry about where the next best grass patch is. And they were just talking about why are humans the only ones that experience, animals don't have these things. The animals don't have in the wild, don't have the same things that domesticated animals do and humans do. And why is that? And a lot of it has to do with stress and anxiety and depression and all of these other things that happen up here in the brain, because whatever's happening up here in the brain, I mean, this is like the command center. So it's sending signals to all these other places in your body that are releasing, these hormones and are releasing all of these signals to your body that just say, oh, release more cortisol, oh, stress. It's like the stress hormone. And that's why you can tend to gain a lot more weight in your midsection, because that's where cortisol is collected. And then what's weight gain going to do? And oftentimes if you're stressed, you're not getting enough sleep. And if you're not getting enough sleep, your mood is going to, everything. So stress really does all encompassing affect your life entirely in all aspects. And stress doesn't come from, I mean, stress can come from positive situations. So there are positive stressors. Getting married, getting a new job, doing all these things are positive stressors. However, the body internalizes stress the same. So that's how you can be doing all these wonderful things like, oh, we're having a baby and we're getting married and I'm changing a job and I'm moving and all this positive stuff, but you can feel mentally drained. Also, I want to point out before I hand it back to Krista is most somatic symptoms actually do not show themselves until 4 to 6 weeks after the stressful event. So if you, what feels like out of the blue, get sick, or out of the blue start having these medical symptoms, or out of the blue, you're like, wow, I just feel so mentally fatigued. Like I can't focus. I can't do this. I can't do that. A lot of the times it is 4 to 6 weeks following a stressful event. And it's almost like the same where like if you were in a stressful situation and you have adrenaline going in your body, you could run a mile on a broken leg, right? And not even know until the adrenaline wears off. And then all of a sudden you feel it and you're like, oh my gosh, I have a broken leg. It's kind of the same thing. Your body releases this, sensation where you can get through the stressful event. And then after it kind of acclimates and all those things are flowing around in your body, all these, almost think of them like toxins, if you will, all of these things are floating around in your body. They have a negative effect and you're going to feel it. So pay attention. This is why it's so important to practice mindfulness, practice meditation, practice journaling, being aware, self-aware of when you're starting to feel stressed. Start recognizing the symptoms beforehand rather than only after the fact. So knowing your body, knowing when you're starting to feel those signs. So go ahead, Krista, you can take it back over.
Okay. This was one funny thing that I found. I know Courtney touched on this a while back. We stopped doing negativity in the group chats. And so if anybody would pop in with something negative, she was like, okay, 5 positives. And one of the things I read on several different sources was, did you know that we need to experience 3 positive emotions for every negative one? And that's what she was talking about. Trick your brain because, okay, say, and you know how it happens. You wake up one morning, you overslept. Well, then your car wouldn't start. Well, then when you got your car started, you had a flat tire. Well, then when you finally got to work, everything just broke loose. The phones weren't working. It never fails when that one bad thing happens. It's just like a trickle effect. And so when you have that negative, just constant negativity, it's really hard to get out of it because like that said, you need 3 positives just for that one negative. So what happens if all you're constantly thinking about is something negative and then you never combat that with 3 positives? You're just piling the negative on. So say you've got 5 negative things happening, think about how many positives you have to flip that. I'm going to talk about different types of negativity because it's not just bad things happening. Sometimes it can manifest in so many different ways. So cynicism is the first one, a general distrust of people and their motives. And a lot of times, I know for myself, this happens. It can happen from childhood trauma. It can happen from a bad relationship with either a significant other, parents, anything. So sometimes that follows us through our whole life. We don't trust anybody after that. And that can put us in really negative headspaces. You kind of have to forgive and just move on. Hostility is the next one. Unfriendliness towards others and unwilling to develop relationships. Sometimes we get a little beside ourselves with different people and we don't want to grow relationships because of bad relationships, or you meet someone who maybe has opposite beliefs or standards as you, and so you're kind of turned off and you just become very hostile towards that person, sometimes for no good reason, just your opinions are different. Filtering, only noticing the bad in what should be a happy experience or memory. I see this a lot in different personalities. We have, okay, say something really good happens, but all you can focus on is the bad. So let's use the example I had. You woke up late. Okay, you still woke up, right? You still woke up to a new day. You still got clothes on your body. You still got food in the pantry. You're only thinking of everything bad that's going wrong. Sometimes you got to be thankful for the good or you're never going to see the good. Polarized thinking is the fourth one. The belief that if something or someone is not perfect, then they must be horrible. This one is, especially being a team or even in a regular workplace, you have to think about the good qualities of people. Not everybody is going to be like you. Thank God, not everybody is like me, because I have my own set of talents. Courtney has her own set of talents. Tracy has her own set of talents. Haley has her own. Everybody has their own set of talents. And if we were all alike, think about all the clashes. So just because they are not perfect to your standards of how you do things, that doesn't mean they're horrible. That doesn't mean that they can't do anything right or they can't do anything good. It just means that's not their strong suit. The next one,
Oh, hold
go
on. I'm
ahead.
just going to interject another thing here that, and I think some of you guys have heard me talk about it, but it's also called thinking in absolutes. So when you think in absolutes, if you use words like never, always, should, things like that, it's because if you're like, oh, you always do this, that's polarized thinking, because no, they don't always do that. They might do it a lot. They might do it frequently. They might do it more than you like. And so that's very dangerous thinking, because what it does is, again, when you say you never do this or you always do this, it's language that forces you to forget or not recognize the things they do, or the things that are positive, or the times they have done that stuff. You're only focusing on the times they didn't. Right? If anyone here is in a relationship, you're like, you never help me out around the house. I'm going to tell you this, the first thing that they are going to do is, again, this creates polarized thinking. So if you're over here on the spectrum, their natural tendency is to want to be over here, right? They're not going to be like, you're right, I need to help you more with the dishes. They're going to be like, yes, I did do the dishes. Remember last January on Tuesday at 3 p.m., I blah, 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 right? They remember, and then it just creates more polarization. I think we are seeing this more and more and more in our world right now, where if it's like, if you are pro this, you must be anti that. Right. And I saw a meme that just says like, oh, I like apples. And they're like, so you hate oranges? Right. And it's like, that is polarized thinking. We live in a world that really promotes that polarized thinking, and it gives it permission to live and abound. And I think if anything, we literally need to combat this now more than ever, because it's being given permission to live like, no pun intended, but like a virus. I mean, it is spreading, this whole polarized thinking. Like, if you're not over here 100% in my camp, right, all in, then you might as well be my enemy, right? You never do this, you always do this. If you don't think my way, then you're basically evil. Like, and we bring this into we bring this into our businesses, with the way we think about our downline, with the way we consider our upline, right? We look at our downline and we're like, you're never on Zooms. You're never this, you're never doing that, right? Or an upline, you never shout me out. You never do this. You're always doing X, Y, and Z. You have to be really, really careful about using that absolute language. And that's why I want to bring to your awareness those absolutes, is not thinking in black and white and not saying always and never. And when you do say always and never, you better flip and mean it. They better have never, ever, ever, ever done that. Okay. Because if not, if you find yourself wanting to say always and never, you need to stop. And instinctively, when you stop, you are automatically reminded that it isn't always, it isn't never. There are some positives. There are some times they did do that. And so with the polarized thinking, one of the prompts that you can use with your brain is, am I using absolute language right now? Am I saying always, never, those kinds of things? It will help you, it'll help trigger that awareness of, oh, this is one of those thought distortions. This is polarized thinking. This is harmful. This is not beneficial to my life. This is not helping me in any way. Okay, go ahead.
All right, next is jumping to conclusions. One of our favorite ones, assuming that something bad will happen because of the circumstances in the present. This is one we hear a lot too. Well, I don't have a team. I don't have an upline. I'm not here. I'm not ranking. I'm not this. My paychecks are horrible. just because it's bad now doesn't mean it's going to be bad in the future. So, just like I talked about last week, staying in that fixed mindset, just because a certain set of things are happening here does not mean you can't do some things to move yourself over here. Not having a team, not having an upline, all of those are just excuses. And at sometimes, yes, they are valid excuses, but can we lean on those excuses forever? No. Just like we have a bad childhood, we have a bad whatever you want to say, that doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever. We have this saying, I forget exactly how it goes, but we say this in my church group all the time. Your current state, your present state doesn't, that's not your permanent state. So your present is not your permanent. You determine that permanent state. You get to change things to move forward. It's not always how it is. You have the power, you have the ability to learn and to grow and to move yourself. So let's not always jump to conclusions just because things are bad right now. Catastrophizing, that is such a hard word to say. The belief that disaster is inevitable. Oh, thank you, baby. She's bringing me a treat. Belief that disaster is inevitable. Just like we've talked about the current state of the world right now, everybody is pretty sure, no matter which side you're on, if you're on the left or the right, you're pretty sure that disaster is inevitable. So we're making the old saying, making mountains out of molehills sometimes. More than likely, catastrophe is going to happen no matter which side you're on. Whatever world you're in, it's going to be disaster no matter what. So a disaster in my world may not be a disaster in someone else's world. It's not always inevitable. We can change things. Blaming, number 7, blaming others for personal maladies and feeling that you are the victim to life's uncontrollable events. That's probably one of the biggest things in psychology that I hear about from various readings. Is there's a lot of victim mentalities that go around, and sometimes you're not the victim, you just play the victim. So blaming someone else for your weaknesses, blaming someone else for your failures, you kind of have to learn to own that. And something I've learned over the years is that sometimes if you're not at fault, technically, you have to just take the blame, say I'm sorry, forgive, and move on, even if you're not the one at fault. There's a lot of power behind that. So just keep that in your mind. Next is emotional reasoning, using your emotions to define what is real and what is not. That's really powerful. Feelings are not facts. I think we had that somewhere else in our notes. Feelings are not facts. And the sooner, here you go, the sooner you grab a hold of that, just because you feel sad, does that mean everything is really sad? Just because you're mad, do you really have a reason to be mad? A lot of times we make up scenarios in our head that aren't actually there. Next is fallacy of change. Wow. The thinking that if people or circumstances change, then you can be happy. So if I had a different job, if I had a different car, if I had a different home, if I had a different kid, if I had different clothes, you name it. If I had a different friend, if I had a different parent, if I had a different whatever you want to say. I've heard this even recently, just watching different people, the way different people act. You can't always change the exact situation, but you can change the way you feel about that situation, because you're born with a certain set of cards, however you want. If a lot of people say, I can't help the cards I was dealt. No, you can't, but you can how you play those cards. So learn how to use those cards to fuel you. Okay, you had bad parents, you were raised rough, or didn't have parents, whatever. Use that to fuel you. Use that to be your why you push so hard. My family, my parents both worked themselves to death. I hated that as a child. Absolutely hated it. They weren't bad parents, but they were very absent. So I wanted different for my daughter. I turned in my notice. I will no longer be working a job where my daughter doesn't even know her mom and dad. I could sit here all day and say, well, I had a horrible childhood. I can't be successful. I can't do this, that, and the other because my parents weren't there. No, I use that to propel me to do better for my daughter. Not that it was the bad thing or the wrong thing to do. That's what they had to do to make ends meet. but I want different for her. I want her to be empowered by that. The last one, heaven's reward fallacy. Now, whether you believe in heaven or hell, this one, just the way this mentality works, type of negativity that assumes there will always be a reward for your hard work and sacrifice. And then when that reward doesn't come, you get bitter and depressed. So especially running for these bonuses, let's say we work really, 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 really hard. We build teams, we gain a ton of customers, and then we fall that short. Or let's say we reach it this month and then we don't reach it the next or the next or the next or the next. And you become really bitter because you were promised that reward and you worked really hard for that reward and something happened. We aren't always rewarded for every little thing we do. That's what's great about Lavelle is the harder you work and the more things you do, the more you make. But always chasing for a reward is not necessarily the best idea.
Yeah, I definitely think, especially as we kind of recap some of those things, it's not that a lot of rewards that you will get won't always come in the form of a check. It won't always come the way you expect it. And I think that's where people kind of need to readjust this thought distortion is, oh, every time I make a sale, every time I hop on Zooms, or, I know a lot of people are like, wow, I changed this for a whole week. I got on Zooms for a whole week and nothing changed, I didn't make one sale. I didn't do anything. It didn't change my business. It didn't do this. It didn't do that. Like sometimes one, you have to stick with something for a little bit longer, but two, it's also you expecting some sort of gold star, some kind of outward reward for action that isn't necessarily going to be, or the reward isn't necessarily going to be physically seen and tangible. Sometimes you're doing things and you're getting on more Zooms. What's it doing? It's shifting your mindset. When you shift your mindset, and again, this is what this whole thing is about, is some of the things you're doing right now, you may not see an immediate reward. You may not see your check quadruple next week or in a couple days, right? But the whole point is whatever it is that you are doing, you have to maintain and keep doing, because it's always any motion is always forward motion, and forward motion is always better than staying stagnant or going backwards. And the only thing you can do when, that's going to help you go backwards is you stopping, right? It's like walking up an escalator that's going down. If you stop moving, you're going to go down. You are not going to maintain any forward motion. And so I definitely see this a lot, where if there's not a promo to run for, no one's doing anything. If there's not a bonus to get, no one's doing anything. If there's not something, a special thing that your upline is running, you're stagnant. You're not selling because you're like, well, I want something right away. I need something in it for me. I want whatever. I need this. But the thing is, if you're doing certain things, again, like we keep talking about, it shifts your mindset. You show up different, you perform different. When you perform differently, you not only attract better things. And that's kind of the whole thing behind the law of attraction, like we talked about last week, is that positive mentality is almost like it's attractive. Positive energy attracts other positive energy. Negative energy attracts other negative energy. So if you're thinking negative and you are stuck in these thought distortions and you are always catastrophizing and you're always thinking in absolutes, you feel like the world is against you, guess what? All those things will be true, right? We all know that saying, if you think, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Because you will make it true, that the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you're a failure, if you believe you suck, if you believe you won't build a team, if you believe you're a crappy leader, all those things will be true. Not because they are inevitably true, but because you will make them true by default, because your actions will follow your thoughts. Again, are you walking the dog or is the dog walking you, right? So I want you to kind of take notes of some of these thought distortions, and I want you to be honest with yourself and write them down and really think to yourself, which ones do I struggle with most? Maybe it's all of them. Maybe it's only a handful. Maybe it's one, but it's a lot and it's debilitating. Okay. So and you don't have to show anybody. So be honest with it. Be honest with yourself, because only once you are aware that you struggle with these can you really begin to work on them. Because awareness is half the problem, right? Like they say in addiction is like admitting you have a problem is the first step. Admitting that you even struggle with it is number one. So I think a lot of times people want to justify, and that's basically kind of a thought distortion too, is they want to say, well, yeah, I struggle with that, but if you were in my position, you would too. Or they want to justify those things. Yeah, I do, but I have depression. Yeah, I do, but okay. So if you find yourself saying that, that is another thought distortion. Okay. You are giving yourself permission to live in negativity. If you want to live there, success doesn't live there too. So if you're trying to chase both of those things at the same time, you're going to be left empty-handed, because success does not grow in negative soil. It just doesn't. So you're throwing seeds where they are just not going to grow. Then go ahead, Krista. You can kind of lead us into the wrap up we have right here.
All right. So negative thoughts and emotions are obviously natural responses to disaster, heartache, tragedies in general. Extended bouts of negativity is where the problems lie. It's okay when you hit a wall to rest there. I saw that. I should have saved it. I saw that today somewhere. Sometimes we do hit walls, and that's okay. Those walls are there. Lay against that wall and rest for a second, but don't stay there. Don't build a camp by the wall. Just knock the wall over and move on. Negativity sends our body into stress, and it leads to serious health problems. We go into this fight or flight mode. I see this in all areas of life, all walks of life, young people, older people, middle-aged people. It's okay. It's okay that some people work in that fight or flight mode, but what happens is every time you hit that wall, instead of pushing through it, instead of growing from it, you almost stay in this same fixed mindset. And then you're just like, well, I got to power through it. I got to power through it. But you don't actually learn anything from it. You come to that next wall. Most of the time, it's that same stinking wall, and you just stay there. And you keep asking yourself, why do I keep running into these same people? Why do I keep running into this same problem? It's because you never developed and you never grew. You never changed the way you thought about that problem. Our bodies are designed to deal with stressful situations by releasing cortisol into our bloodstream, and that makes you more alert and focused. That's sort of why, like she was talking, that adrenaline running, you get it, like it courses through your veins and you feel powerful in that moment. But what happens when all that kind of goes away? Like she said, you get really fatigued, and it may not be right then that you experience, and you might feel great in the moment. 6 months later, guess what? Something happens and you just feel really crushed. Some stress is good for us. Too much is detrimental to your health. Extended periods of negativity actually slows your digestion. It decreases the immune system's ability to fight inflammation. This is why negative people are more likely to get sick than optimists are.
Yep. Crap. And I was going to say something back up here, and I was like, oh, that's good. But this in typical me fashion, because I didn't say it immediately. I would think going back to the fight or flight. I know we've talked about the triune brain, and the triune brain is like, I want you to think of like concentric circles. Okay. I want you to, so basically what they do is I want you to think about, go like this. Okay. So here is your primal brain, okay, your palm. Then I want you to put your thumb down like this. This is your mammal brain. And then I want you to go like this. This is your outer part of your brain, your human brain. So this is kind of what it looks like. And that's why it's ironic that they say your brain is about that big. So, but your brain has specific parts, different layers, okay? This is also known as your reptile brain, but it's your primal brain. This controls all of your basic organ functions, your breathing, your heart rate, everything. This is where fight or flight lives. Right down here in the hippocampus and the amygdala, that just triggers your brain, and it just says, warning, there is something bad going on. You need to act. Okay. This is the only thing reptiles act on. Okay. Snakes, lizards, dinosaurs, whatever, right? This is what they act on. That is it. Then you have right here, which is the mammal brain. The mammal brain is what dominates all of our emotions. And, this is where most mammals are, like dogs and dolphins. That's why they can attach and they can have emotions to an extent, and they can love and they can feel things. However, this is also a very volatile state to be in, because it doesn't have here what's called the forebrain right here, which develops later on in life, that humans have, which makes us different than animals, is thought, reasoning, and judgment. That happens right here in your frontal lobe. Okay. That's also why a lot of people got lobotomies. Okay. And so that your frontal lobe develops, and that helps you reason and judgment. Why do you need all those things? If you are constantly living in fight or flight, you are activating, and this is like your brainstem right here, you are activating all of those parts of your body, your breathing, your lungs, your heart rate, your gut, all of that stuff. That's why it is so deeply connected. So if you were constantly triggered by stuff, if you were constantly in that fight or flight, if you always think people are out, if you have these thought distortions, that's where you're living. Okay, you're living right here. On your best days, you're living maybe right here in the mammal brain. Okay, what happens is because the mammal brain and the primal brain are so close together, they don't have to travel very far. So you get triggered, right? It comes like, whoosh, you get triggered, fight or flight, boom, cortisol goes everywhere. Your body's like, warning, you need to act right now. Okay, it's like your brain doesn't know the difference between a door slamming and a tiger coming to kill you. Like, it doesn't know that. That's where this happens right here. They're like, wait, it's a door, not a tiger. Don't react that way. Okay. But a lot of people who are constantly living in that fight or flight, they don't go there. Their body it just reacts that way. And that's why they deal with a lot of those sicknesses and those illnesses, and they put on a lot of weight, and they stress, and they can't sleep, and they have all of these mental health disorders, and they have, I mean, I've met people who like run the gamut of health disorders, right? They like literally, it looks like a CVS receipt. Okay. It's like so long. And so why it's so important and why we talk about mindset, right, is a lot of people come here, right? They're it's triggered. They're like fight or flight, whatever. They have emotions about it. They start processing. They have these thought distortions. They're like, oh my gosh, I feel really cast aside. I feel really anxious. I feel really this. They're processing their emotions, but they never make any sense of it. Okay. It never comes over here to reasoning and judgment where you make sense of it. This is where your positive mindset happens in your frontal lobe. Why? Because you're processing events. You're using heightened awareness. You're processing a lot of those emotions that are coming up from your primal brain, right? A lot of the reactions and the emotions that you feel about it, you are now in control of all of those thoughts, of all of that, of all of those processes that happen when you are experiencing these difficult situations. Okay. And that's why mindset is so important, is because you need to develop better your prefrontal cortex, your frontal lobe, because that is where your reasoning and judgment happens. However, most people don't live there. They live in their mammal brain. And so when you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm living in my mammal brain, I'm not as evolved. I'm not as evolved. I'm not acting like a human right now. I'm no better than a dog or a dolphin or, a whale right now. And so that is why, again, it's so important, because practicing that, what it does is when you practice it, it becomes your default. When you are triggered, it no longer stays here or here, it goes right to here. And the better you become at managing it, when you experience stressful situations, you have this instantaneous rush, right? You're triggered. You have an emotion for a split second, and then your brain goes right into rationalization and making logic of it. Okay. Making a logical sense and being in control of that thought process. So that's why, just like we said, practice makes perfect. Do it over and over and over again. Master your mindset. Understand you are in control, because the more that you do that, the more likely and the quicker you are to be able to go from your primal brain, mammal brain, human brain. And the quicker you can do that, the more adept you get, and the more self-awareness you have, and the more self-actualization, we call it. So there's like this functional human period, and your goal in life is to get to the tippy top, where it's called self-actualization. All right. And the more that you practice that, the more that you live in that human part of your brain, right? That prefrontal cortex, the better you become at managing your mindset and managing your health. Like we talked about, you're going to feel less sick. You're going to find it easier to manage your weight. You're going to experience less symptoms of, mental illness and physical illness. So, Krista, do you have any closing remarks before we let them go? No? Okay. So I hope you guys found this useful. Like I said, we're going to continue talking about these things. We have one more just kind of general overview of mindset. And then in February, we are going to begin kind of doing some more actionable things with you guys, more activities, I guess you could say, where we are going to be practicing interventions with our mindset, learning how to master it. So February is definitely going to be more skills based, whereas January, this month, is more so just kind of setting the stage and giving you some more awareness of what we're going to be working on. So I hope you guys found this useful. As always, these will be uploaded to the team YouTube channel, usually within 24 hours. So definitely look for it there if you need to revisit it or pass it along to people. Thank you guys so much for hopping on. We will catch you at 7:30, so in 1 hour, on the boot camp. So we'll catch you here. Bye, guys.